Hi, I'm Deanne Akers-Lance from Canada Abroad, and welcome to this week's episode of FAQ Friday. So we've been receiving a lot of questions from people who are currently in Canada on the IEC program. So whether it's young professionals, working holiday, and those permits are about to expire. So a lot of people are asking what they can do to extend those permits in Canada. And right now, unfortunately, there's no way to directly extend your working holiday visa. If it's expiring, unfortunately, it is going to expire. So there was some rumors, I think, going around some forums that because of COVID, they were allowing people to extend the work permit. But unfortunately, that is incorrect. What they are recommending is if you are in the country and your permit is expiring, if you want to remain, you will need to apply to change your condition to a visitor. So change your status to a visitor before the expiry of your work permit. So this is one option that's available. For some people, if they've gotten a job offer and that employer has done the labor market impact assessment, or it's exempt from a labor market impact assessment, as long as you apply for that new work permit before your current one expires, you will go on to what they call implied status. So you will be allowed to remain and will be allowed to work in Canada while you're waiting for the outcome of that new work permit. And while you're on the implied status, you'll also be able to use the SIN number that you had previously. It will still be valid until your new work permit is issued. If your application for the new work permit is denied, you would then lose your implied status and would have to comply with your rejection letter when you needed to leave the country. Now, some people are applying for a new IEC permit. So maybe they were on a working holiday and now they're trying to get a young professionals permit. And even though we know the draws are, closed at the moment, but this is just a scenario. If you were in Canada on a working holiday and you had submitted your new work permit application for the young professionals, there is no implied status. So basically what they've said is if you're on one type of IEC work permit and you're applying for a new one, there is no implied status. You would not be allowed to keep working while that second one is in process. So you would have to make sure that you have valid legal status as a visitor then at that stage or leave the country. Also, for those that are looking at going from a work permit, so if they are on the working holiday and they're changing their status to a visitor, you cannot work. You're only here as a visitor. And once they get your extension and they process it, right now processing is over 100 days. So if you are going to ask for an extension, try to ask for the full 6 months, because by the time they get to your application, you might not have that much time issued to you. So you might as well ask for the longest possible, but you would have to provide an explanation of why you want to stay that long and do you have the financial resources to do so. So just keep that in mind as well. Now, if you are applying for permanent residency, so maybe you're on a working holiday or young professionals, any type of IEC permit, and you are putting in your application for permanent residency. As long as you submit the permanent residency application and it's accepted, if your work permit is expiring within the next 4 months, you can apply for a bridging open work permit that would then allow you to remain in Canada and continue working while you're waiting for your permanent residency. And the one thing that I ask here is before you apply for that bridging open work permit, you would just want to make sure that your current work permit is expiring within the next 4 months. So if your permit's only expiring in 7 months, you can't yet apply for that bridging open work permit. So just keep that in mind as well. So right now, if you are in the country on an IEC permit, there's no way to directly extend it. You would have to change your conditions or apply for a new work permit. The other thing that we've been seeing a lot, maybe your IEC permit when you originally entered was not issued to the correct date. So maybe the officer said, okay, well, maybe they just made a mistake, because we've seen that happen too. But they issued your, what should have been a 2-year working holiday and gave you 1 year. In certain circumstances, you can correct this. We will provide the link of where to do so in the comment section below. But there's certain things that would exclude you from getting this extension. So let's say when you arrived and maybe the officer made a genuine error, when you're applying for that extension and maybe they see that you didn't have medical coverage, because part of the IEC program is having that health insurance coverage, and say your permit should have been valid for 2 years, but they see that when you entered, you only had health insurance for 6 months. Technically, at the border, the officer should only have issued that IEC work permit for 6 months. A lot of people don't realize this. And if that was the case, you would not be able to extend it past that 6 months. So anyone who's watching and you are going to be entering Canada on, an IEC permit, make sure your health insurance and your proof shows that it's valid for the full duration of your permit. Otherwise, it might get shortened and you won't be able to extend it. So just keep that in mind. It's very, very important. But if it is just a case that the officer made an error, then I will provide that link that you can go ahead and ask for that extension in the meantime. So thanks for tuning in. And as always, put your questions in the comments below, and we will hopefully address it in next week's episode of FAQ Friday. Stay safe, stay healthy. If you're in Canada, enjoy the summer weather that we're finally having, and we'll see you next week.